Good morning. Today's daf is daf Ayin Dalet, and we are up to Omer of Nachman, Omer Rabba Baravua, which is 4 lines from the top of the daf. Omer of Nachman, Omer Rabba Baravua. Rabbi Nachman said in the name of Rabba Baravua, in the name of Rav, Tabas Shalavodis Kachavim. If someone had a ring of Avodah Zorah, and what does a ring of Avodah Zorah mean? Zok Rashi, Sheniskashta ba Avodah Kachavim. It was used to adorn an Avodah Zarah, and therefore it becomes Aser Bana. Shnis Arva B'meya Tabois. It got mixed in with 100 other rings. B'nafla Achas Mehem Liam Hagadol. And one of these rings fell into the Yam, meaning it was totally eliminated. The halach is Hutru Kulon. All the remaining rings are mutter. Why is that? Again, we know that really one is bottle and two. I saw there's a bittul baroiv. It's only with the rabbanon that certain things require either more things to be bottle or even things that can't be bottled at all. These are all
Mazel,
with the rabbanon.
Mazel Tov, Yosy. Mazel
Thank you
Tov.
very much.
Dolana Nachas.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. Baruch Hashem, there was two Toronto singles, right? I think Chaim Fear made Chasna last night and A.B. Rottenberg.
Right.
So Baruch Hashem, I actually benefited a little bit from A.B.'s Chasna because A.B.'s granddaughter is a tenant by my daughter, and we always have an issue with parking, but now we don't have an issue with parking because they're in Toronto, so we could block their car. So indirectly we benefited.
I'm amazed that did you sleep at all?
Yeah. I got into bed at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. I got into bed, so I got a couple of hours in Baruch Hashem, and I'll sleep later today. Okay.
Okay.
So Omer
Okay.
Omer Nachman Omer Rabba Barvu Omer Rav Sabachim Kachavim Shinas Arva B'Meya Tabois B'Nofla Achasman Liam Agadol Hutru Kulam. Because anyway, the fact that it wouldn't be bottled would be Midir Rabbanon, and Hamrina the Chum say Hach Dnafal Hainu Yisura. Let's say the one that fell, that was the one that was of Isser, that was Dishana, and therefore the rest of them we can be Toila were not from Avodah Zarah. That is the Chiddush that Rav Nachman said over. The Gemara is going to attribute this to Rav Nachman. Ese Rava Rav Nachman. So Rava asks the Kasha of Rav Nachman. Our Mishnah says, Afilu Achas Beriboy Yamusu Kula. Even if one Isser got mixed into a 10,000 karbonis, all the karbonis have to be destroyed. Based on your logic, am I Nema the Miss Isurimis? Say that after the first one dies, or if you kill the first one, but after the first one dies, say that was the Isser. And if that was the Isser, the rest of them should be mutter. There's a story that happened during the Holocaust when the Yidden were in the concentration camp, and there was a chicken that went missing from the kitchen. And of course, they wanted to know which of the inmates stole it, and they would kill him. So they lined everybody up, and they said, unless the person that stole this chicken comes forward, we're just going to shoot you one by one. And of course, nobody would snitch, and of course, nobody would come forward, and the Nazis shot dead a Yid. And then again, the Nazi in charge of the camp said, does anybody know who stole the chicken? And right away, a little child stepped forward, and he says, yes, sir, I know who stole the chicken. And the Nazi said, yes, who did? And he pointed to the Yid that had already been killed. He stole the chicken. There was a chachma of a child to know to blame it on the Yid that was already killed anyway. So that's what this Gemara reminds me of. the animal that died anyway, or the ring that fell into the water, let's say that was the Isser, and therefore the rest of them become mutter. So Zok to Gemara, Omelei Rav, the Omer Reb Eliezer. Rav says his halacha with the Tana Rabbi Eliezer, who in fact argues on the Tana of our Mishnah. Titnan Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer said, it's the same Rabbi Eliezer that we had on the first line of our daf. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Imkar for Rosh, Shalachet Mehen, you had karbonis that were already killed, and one of them turned out being a Balmum, but we don't know which one. So you have a whole bunch of pieces of carbonates that need to be placed on the mizbeach, and one of them is from a balmum, but we don't know which one. So the halacha is you're not allowed to be makar of any one of them on the mizbeach. But what happens in karav harosh shalachet ben? What if they already were wrongfully maktir the roish of one of the animals? The halacha is yikruvu kol roshim kulam. Because of the same svara, we say that was the one, that was the iser, that was the one, that was the balmum. So that is who Rav Nachman said is halacha. Like, but Avada, our Mishnah is not going according to Rabbi Eliezer, it's going like the Tanakh. Frank the Gemara of Amor Rabbi Lozer. The Amor Rabbi Lozer told us a halacha qualifying Rabbi Eliezer's chiddush, and he said like hit Rabbi Eliezer, elo shnayim shnayim. Rabbi Eliezer was only matir if they are going to be maktir now 2 heads at a time. One at a time, he wouldn't be maktir. So now we have a second condition that there has to be 2 at a time. Why does it have to be 2 at a time? So that's my lottery ticket theory. I have a theory about lottery tickets, and that is you should never buy 2 lottery tickets because you want to have a chance of winning. If you buy 2 lottery tickets, you're guaranteed that one of them cannot be the winner. So why would you buy a ticket when you're guaranteed that you're going to lose? It doesn't make sense. So that's the theory of these 2 roshim, that you have to be maktir together. And the word is, if you remark the 2 roshim together, one of them is guaranteed not to be the balmum, because there was only one balmum. So for sure, one of these 2 heads that you're being maktir is not the balmum. So we'll say migui that the one of them is not a balmum. We'll say that they're both not a balmum. It's a chiddush in the chiddush of Rabbi Eliezer. So if that's the case, even if one tabas fell in, but you can only sell 2 tabas at a time. So Dr. Chanami, Omer Alei Anot Tarti Kamina. I mean that yes, all the other rings become mutter, but you cannot sell one at a time. You'd have to sell them in pairs. Omer Rav said, Tabas Shalavudis Kachavim Shenis Arba B'Meya Tabas. What if, same story, one ring of Avodah Zarah got mixed in with 100 other rings? Well, Pershu, and the rings were split into 2 sets. 40 were separated to one place. V'shishim l'mokim acher, and 60 of the 100 went to the other place. So the halacha is parsha achas me'er boim. What if from the group of 40, 1 was separated? The halacha is eino yeseres. It doesn't aser. It does not aser, and therefore we say that the 40 is going to be mutter. However, the remaining 40 will be mutter. But achas mishishim. But if one of the 60 group, one of the group of 60 rings is removed or separates from the bunch, then the halacha is achas mishishim oiseres, it will be aser. I don't understand the distinction. Ma'ishno achas merboim deloy. Why is it that if one separated from the 40, we say that called the parish miruba parish, and it's not Isra na damrinon isura baruba isay, we'll say that the roiv, the Isser, when originally you split up the 60 into 40, we say that the Isser remained with the 60. It wasn't the roiv. When you took 1 out of the 40, the Isser Vaiter remained with the roiv. Achas mishishim nami amrinon isura baruba isay. If one separates from the 60, Let's say that the Isser is probably in the remaining 59, not in the one that you removed. So Oibazoi, why should it be? Why should there be a difference between the 40 and the 60? Ella, we have to explain what we mean, and we mean as follows: In Pershu Arboim Kulam L'Makam Echad, if 40 gets separated from the 60, a nice all of those 40 will be mutter. Now, avada doesn't mean they're mamish mutter. Rashi means if then from that 40 gets mixed into another group, the next group remains mutter. However, echad mishishim, if one of the group of 60 got mixed in to another group, shishim l'machem echad oisrois. And Rashi makes the distinction. So Rashi says in Dibur Hamaschu Ella, if 40 out of the 60 rings were separated to a different place, Vinis Arvu Bishar Tabois, and then they got mixed in with other rings, Einon Oishrin. So if these 40 got mixed in to other rings, Einon Oishrin, they won't answer all of the other rings. Now, Rina will say, Isura B'Shishim, will say that from this 40, there's no Isur at all, because the Isur remained in the larger group, in the group of 60. Even though the 40, once they're separated from the 60, of course, they remain Usur if they're by themselves. The Afilu Rabbi Eliezer, even Rabbi Eliezer, who says that if you threw one away, if one was thrown away, you'll blame that on the Isser. That loy Omar Toilen es a Isser ele bedavar sha'avad. That Rabbi Eliezer said that Chiddush is only kagoin shenofla achas mehen liyam hagadol. It had to be not that you just separated it, but it's still there. It has to be disappeared. It has to be out of action, out of circulation. Dumyo the karev haroy shalechet mehen, similar to the halacha when the carbon, one of the heads of the karbanos that are in the suffix of a balmon, was put on the mizbeach, burnt. It's no longer here. Nobody has a hot minute to say that if 40 gets separated from the 60, that all those 40 are mutter. Because the halacha is, you don't say that avodah zarah is bottle b'roiv. And all those 40, even when separated from the 60, remain as a suffix of avodah zarah. But when these 40 get mixed into another larger group of rings, then there's a svek second. Could be the original 40 never had avodah zarah in it. And even if it did, now that it's mixed in with others, and I take one of the others for sure wouldn't have avodah zarah in it, because there's the first suffix of maybe the original 40 weren't avodah zarah, and even if they were, maybe the one that you're picking now from the group that the 40 got mixed into is not avodah zarah, and therefore it's a svek sveka. But pershu shishim l'makam echad asurais. But if the group of 60 got mixed into others, there it's not a svek sveka. The kibun the isura beruba say, since chances are the ring that was asur remained in the group of 60, have a kulu sofek avodas kachavim. We say it's a single sofek avodas kachavim which remains asur. Gewaltig. Zog to Gemara weiter. When we said over this halacha of Rab Nachman to Shmuel, who made that distinction between sofek avodas zarah, which is asur, and svek sveka avodas zarah, which is mutter, Shmuel said, I disagree with this whole Torah. You know why? Hanach lavodas kachavim shesveka usefek sveka osura atzayvayim. When it comes to avodah zarah, such a davar chamer, even a sveka would be asur. So even if the 40 got mixed into other rings, they would all be asur. The sveka of avodah zarah is asur. So Shmuel comes along with a big chiddush that we do believe in sveka, and it would be matter other isurim, but the isur of avodah zarah is distinct and unique, that it's not bottle, even if it's a svek sveka. Frag to Gemara, Meisvei. We're going to ask a kash on Shmuel. The Brisa says as follows: Sofek avodas kachavim asura. Safek avodah zarah is aser, usvok sveka muteres, which is a very clear brisa stating not like Shmuel. Ketat, and the brisa gets into detail. Kois shal avodas kachava shenof ala oitzer. What if a kois of avodah zarah fell into an oitzer mole koisos full of other koisos? Plul nasurim, they're all loser because avodah zarah is not bought. However, pirish echad ben larib. What if one of this group of koisos separated and ended up getting mixed in with 10,000 other koisos, and then one of those 10,001 koisos, some of those got mixed into another different set of 10,000 koisos, mutarin, they're all mutar. So it's saying quite clearly that a svek sveka, even that of avodah zarah, is going to be mutar. How could you Shmuel say it's aser? So there's a machlekes Tanoim about this subject, and Shmuel, although the Tana you just illustrated disagrees with Shmuel, I'm going to show you that there is a Tana that agrees with Shmuel who holds that by avodah zarah sveka is a sur. The Tanya we learned, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rimoine Badam, the pomegranates from Baden are very chashuv and they never bought, and therefore oisrin b'kolshu. Now this isn't necessarily talking about avodah zarah. Rashi says it might be speaking about truma, about orla, but it's also b'kolshu because they're devorim chashuvim ad moed. Ketat. Let me give you an example. Nafal echad v'nosech ribui. If one of the rimoni bada fell into 10,000 other rimoni, umei ribui l'ribui, and then some from that group fell into another group. Asurin, they'll all be osir. Why is that? Because rimoni bada are never bought. Rab Shimon ben Yehuda Omer Mishum Rab Shimon l'ribui asurin. The first 10,000 that a rimoni bada got mixed into will all be osir because it's not bottled. But the second time some of that group goes into a different group, mutter because it's a svek. So let's think. You want to say that Shmuel has a Tana who'll agree with him to the distinction that avodah zarah unique, even a svek is not going to be mutter. So let's think these two Tanoim that you picked. Does Shmuel fit in according to any of them? Shmuel or come on. Who will you say Shmuel is in agreement with? Ikar Rabbi Yehuda, if you want to say like he also Rabbi Yehuda, Afilu Bishari Surim also. Rabbi Yehuda said Rimoni Bat Adover Chashiv is not bottled, not only by avodah zarah, it's by every yisur. So that's not the shita of Shmuel. And Ikar Rabbi Shimon, if you're going to say like Rabbi Shimon states that it's bottled by other Yisurim, doesn't say anything specifically about avodah zarah. So why would we assume that Rabbi Shimon makes a distinction about avodah zarah? And Reb Shimon, we have no reason to believe that Reb Shimon's halacha is any different by avodah zarah. Otherwise, he would have told us. So where do you find the Tana to support the sheet of Shmuel? And if you want to say that Reb Shimon indeed makes a distinction between other isurim, where he's mater, and avodah zarah, where he wouldn't, then we still have a problem. Because the brisa that we just quoted to ask on Shmuel from, what did the brisa say? The brisa says, "Sofak avoid tzikav masura usfek sveka muteres." Zok Gemara lahatanya sofak avoid tzikav masura usfek sveka muteres mani. Which Tana is going to agree with that brisa? Lo Rabbi Yehuda. According to you, Rabbi Yehuda holds even not avoid zarah, everything svek sveka is also. V'loy Rab Shimon, and there couldn't be Rab Shimon. If you're going to tell me that Rab Shimon is making a distinction between avodah zarah and other yisurim, like Shmuel was, well then, who's going to be the Tana of that anonymous brisa that we asked the Kasha on Shmuel from? Zok Gemara lo olam Rab Shimon. Let's say that it's going according to Rab Shimon. So let's say that the brisa that says that by avodah zarah, is mutter, not like Shmuel. Let's say that's going according to Reb Shimon. So now we're back to square one. Who do we have? A Tana to support Shmuel. Shmuel can't argue Sion or Yehuda and Sion or Shimon. Zok Gemara, you know what Shmuel holds? Sovalok Reb Yehuda b'chada upolag alei b'chada. He agrees with Rabbi Yehuda that Rimoine Badan are not bottle at all. However, that's only by Avodah Zarah. He only agrees with Rabbi Yehuda by Avodah Zarah. And he holds like Rabbi Shimon by not Avodah Zarah. So therefore, Shmuel is a hybrid. He is partially holding like Rabbi Yehuda and partially holding like Rabbi Shimon, but in fact, there's no Tana that says specifically like Shmuel said. Omar Mar, let's analyze this last brisa that we just learned. So let's just get clear what happened. You had Israel, you got mixed into 10,000. And then one of the 10,000 got mixed into another three. It doesn't really make a difference if it's mixed into three or mixed into 10,000, right? Either way, it's bottle road. And then it says, and then if it got mixed into another roiv, again, it's going to be mut. That's what the Brisa said. So, correct the Gemara on Daf Ayin Dalet on days. Maishno Shloisha, the Ikaruba. Why did it say that one of these 10,000 got mixed into three others? It could have got mixed into two others. Shnaim Nami Ikaruba. So the Mishnah should have said, Umei Ribui L'Shnaim, because the two would overwhelm the one and would make it into a Svek Sveka. Zogt Gemara Einachanami. You're right. My Gimel de Katani, when we say one from the 10,000 got mixed into three, it means three, including this item that got mixed in. My Gimel de Katani, Tarte Vahu. It just means two plus the one that got mixed in for a total of three. Or you could say, and this next line is there's two Lashonis in Rashi to be Mefarshit. So we'll learn the first Lashon and then we'll learn the second Lashon. Maybe Shmuel, going back to the Kasha we asked on Shmuel, who will Shmuel be like? He doesn't fit in like Rabbi Yehuda, who holds Tzvek as also, even by other Isurim. And Rabbi Shimon holds that Tzvek Tzveka is mutter, even by Avodah Zarah. So who does Shmuel hold like? Maybe he holds like Rabbi Eliezer that says a different halacha that's not quoted in our Gemara. What is that? Zot Rashi, there's a Gemara that says that if you had eitzim of Avodah Zarah and you heated up an oven to forge the oven, that oven gets destroyed. If you used it to heat up an old oven, you shouldn't be baking bread in that oven with the heat of the Isur Hana. But what if you did bake bread in the heat of that Isur Hana? Then the halacha is that the pas that was baked will also be Asur B'Hana. Now, if it got mixed in with others, and then again it got mixed into a third mixture, Zok Rabbi Eliezer, they're all going to be Asur. So this is the Shita of Shmuel, not like Rabbi Shimon, not like Rabbi Yehuda. We found the third time that Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that by Avodah Zarah, there's a Chomer. That's one pshat in what this Gemara means. But there's another pshat in what this Gemara means. And the reason why they don't like necessarily this first pshat is because suddenly we're middle of trying to find out what's the Shita of Rabbi Shimon. We're looking into understanding pshat in the Brisa. What's pshat into three? So how is it that without any notice, without any transition, we're going back to the Frida Kashayla? So therefore, Rashi in the second shot learns we're referring Reb Shimon. Why did it have to get mixed into three others, and for a sum total of four? Why couldn't it have just got mixed into two others for a sum total of three? Zaktimar, it's going according to Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer that we learned on Namad Aleph, according to Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that even when there's a heter, you could only use two at a time because of that svara. If one of these two are for sure mutter, the other one will be mutter as well. So if that's the case, you'll only be able to be matter if there's four in the group of Suffolk. So if one got mixed into three and there's four in the group of Suffolk, then you could sell two at a time. But if you only have three, then you would only be able to sell two at a time, and one would remain asur. Gewaltig. Zok the Gemara weiter, the third line of Ayin Dalet. Omer Shlomish. Chavishal truma shenis arva b'meya chavimis. What if 100 barrels of kosher wine, chulin, got mixed in with 1 barrel of truma got mixed into it? So now we know chaviyos are dvarim chashuvim, they're not bottled. So now all of these chaviyos are like truma. V'nafla achas mehen liyam hagadol. The Shita changed the gears to Yam HaGadol, and one of them got eliminated. 1 barrel fell into the Yam HaGadol. The Allah is Chutru Chulam. We're going to say now that all the barrels have status of Chulam. The Amrinan, we say, Hachte Nafal, Disur Nafal. Let's say that the barrel that fell into the Yam HaGadol was the Truma, and therefore we can be matter the rest of them. So, frank to Gemara, we have a redundant halacha. Isn't that the same halacha that we learned on Amar Aleph, relevant to Isur Ano, to a tabas, that Rab Nachman taught us on Amar Aleph, that if one tabas of Avodah Zarah got mixed into 100 tabois of non-Avodah Zarah, and one of this mixture fell in to the Yam HaGadol, the rest of them are mutter. So we know that halacha. Why was it necessary for a shlokish to teach us almost identical halacha related to barrels of wine? Each of these two halachas are relevant to be taught us. One by Rav Nachman, one by Reish Lakish. We wouldn't know one from the other. Even to Rav Nachman, if we only knew that a ring of Avodah Zarah that fell in, or a ring of mixture that fell into the Yam HaGadol, that it's mutter, Hamamina Hanamili Avodah Chav. I would have thought that we only have this kula by Avodah Zarah. Why? There's no other way that we can fix this problem. We have 100 rings now that all become usher because one mixed in. We can't fix it. So therefore we'll be makel. If one fell into the water, we'll blame it on the isser. So big deal. So 100 barrels became truma. They're not a total waste. You'll sell them to kayanim. Yeah, you'll have to sell them for a little bit less because truma isn't as costly as chulin, but you could solve this problem without coming on to bittul. So I would have said, loy. I would have thought that just because 1 barrel fell in, we're not going to be matter the other barrels. And if we only knew the lacha by truma, if a big barrel falls in and is eliminated, it will be noticeable in the remaining barrels that something's missing here. So therefore, it's mistaber that you could be told of the one that's missing because everyone sees that it's missing, and you'll be told that in the Isser. When there's 101 rings and one ring falls in, it's not obvious that one is missing. So if you're going to allow the rest of them to be used, people are going to think that you don't need to worry at all about Isur Ano. Loy, I would say that it would not be bottled. Even then, even if it's not minkara, even if it's not very obvious, it's still going to be mutter. We will still say that the one that fell in is of is. Zok to Gemara. Omarava, Zok Rabba, Lahita Rish Lakish, Ela Chavis, the minkara nefilasa. Rish Lakish actually argues in Rav Nachman, and he holds a chavis. It's noticeable. People can tell there's one missing, so that's why they're matter the rest. Avo tabas delay minkara nefilasa, a tabas which you can't tell, and therefore we're concerned that people will think that everything's mutter. That tabas the mikra nefilasa lo trich amar Rabba later shlokish al chavis the mikra nefilasa avo te'ena. But if it was just a fig, similar to a ring, loy, there it's not minkara nefilasa, and therefore he would disagree with Rav Nachman. Rish Lakish would disagree with Rav Nachman, and he would hold that by a tabas, in fact, it would not be mutter. Gewaltig. Zog to Gemara weiter. However, Rabbi Yosef argues, and he says no. Even if it was a ring, even if it was a te'ena, that's not noticeable. We would still be matter if one of them fell into the river or the ocean. You know what? If one discrete item that's not so noticeable falls into a mix, it makes it usher. So that same discrete item, if it fell into the Yam HaGadol, it should be matered. As Rashi says, kinefilasa kachaliyasa, kishem shetchilas nefilasa, the soicha heter, nechsheves beinayich, lesser aselu. If you're going to say that one little discrete ring falling into a big multitude of rings should usher everything, well, by the same token, Kach kisha also mitoichan. If one of these small discrete items fall out, yichoshev veinach, it should be just as choshev mokam aliyasa lahatir to be able to be matir. Amar Belazar, chavis shel truma shenaflo bekuf chaviyos. What if a chavis of truma fell into kuf chaviyos? Chaviyos are not bottled when they're sealed. They're a davar chashiv. We're talking about chavis of wine. So you know what you could do? Poisech echad mehen. You could open up one barrel, and if you open up one barrel, that barrel is no longer chashiv, because once the barrel is open, we'll say that they're going to be bottled, and therefore we'll say that the Isser is bottled. But as a chumrah, we will at least be mafresh a minimal amount to 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 say that that was truma, and through that you'll be matir the rest. So take just a small amount of wine and give that to the kohen, and then v'shoisha you could drink the rest. Big chiddush in kula. Let's see Rashi. Poisach echad mehen v'chivan deniftecha. Once one barrel was opened, yesh labitl. A wine barrel that's opened will be bottled, loses its cheshivas. Hilchach noitel hemena kedei dimua achas mimea ve'achas sheba. Take one part of 101 and therefore give it to the kohen. Ha'achas nis'arva b'kuf, because that was the case. 1/101th is truma here. So of that barrel, take out that amount. Okay, gewaltig. Zog to Gemara. Amar Boishia, chavis shel truma shenis arva b'mei v'chamishim chavis. What if a chavis of truma didn't get mixed into 100 others? It got mixed into 150 others. V'niftechu meya mehen, and 100 of the 150 were opened up. So the halacha is noitale mena kedeti mua. You only have to take out a little bit of wine to give to the kohen. V'shoisa, and you could drink them. The shar and the 50 barrels that were left sealed, there's no bittul by them, they'll be asur ashe yifchatu. You say that they'll be asur. Why don't you say chances are the isser was in the 100 barrels that were opened, therefore it will be bottled, and the isser was not in the 50 barrels that were left closed. So you don't say that chances are the isser was in the 100, and therefore the 50 remain also until they lose their status of cheshivas as a sealed barrel. Gewaltig. Zog to Gemara weiter. Haroiva vanirva. We learned that if haroiva and nirva gets mixed into other karbanos, you can't be marked of these karbanos, and there were other psulim listed such as treifa. And what do? You wait till they all get a mum, and then you're paid to them. And with the money of the biggest animal, you'll buy whatever carbon this Raiva Nirva, this Treifa got mixed into. So, Kulu lo yadia. I understand all of the other psulim, like Raiva Nirva. If an animal that was Raiva or Nirva got mixed into a barrel, got mixed into a group of other animals, how in the world are you going to know which one it was? It's impossible to know by looking at an animal if it was a Raiva or a Nirva. And therefore, it's a mix. However, but elahai treifa hechadami. If it's a treifa, that means you know you've identified simoni treifa animal. Well, if you identified simoni treifa animal, so how could it have gotten mixed up with other animals? If you inspect all the animals, you'll see the one with the simoni treifa. So hechadami. Ideally, if you are able to identify the treifa, to take it out of the group, and the rest of the group are regular kosher components. And if we can't identify which one it is, so mina yada the Arab. How do you even know that there is a treifa mixed in here? The halacha is if an animal's skin gets punctured by a thorn, there'll be a hole there, but it won't harm for the animal. But if the hole came because the nails of a wolf was sunk in to the skin of an animal, that gets infected. That's something that will be a treifa. So you find holes, penetrations in the skin of an animal, but you don't know what made that penetration. Was it the Zayd, and therefore this animal is a treifa, or was it the kites? So we know we had a Drush Zayd got mixed in, but there's other animals there that have holes in their skin that are not treifa. So therefore, we're not able to identify which one was the treifa. Rish Lakish Omer, I'll tell you another option. Go the Eirav bin Afula. Now the halacha is if an animal falls off a building and it crunches to the ground, it's in the status of treifa. You wouldn't be able to be makar it as a korban or eat it as even deshechted. However, if it stays alive, if it's able to stand up, then if we wait 24 hours, we can assume it's not a treifa. And if it actually can stand up and walk, then right away we assume it's not a treifa. But after we shecht it, we have to check it very carefully to make sure there is no damage to its internal organs. So let's say it was the Arav bin Nafula. It was the Arav bin Nafula. The Nafula, we can't see what's going on inside, and that's why we say it was mixed in with a treifa. Frank Kamar, I don't understand. Nafula Nami, Livdika. So be baidik, the Nafula. Zakt Gemara, Kasavar Omda Shricha Me'es La'es, Holcha Shricha Medika. So I actually made a mistake. The halacha by an afula, the Gemara is suggesting that if it's holcha, it doesn't need a bedika at all, and therefore it would be therefore we would be able to make a bedika on it if it can walk or if it can't walk. Dr. Gemara, this Tana holds our Tana holds that even if it walks, it needs bedika. So therefore, there's no way to discern which was the one that was the treifa. Rabbi Yirmi has a third option as to what our Mishnah could be talking about. Going to the Arab of La treifa. There was an animal that was a treifa. That did not get mixed into the group. But the animal that was a treifa gave birth to a healthy animal, and that healthy animal got mixed into the group. And he holds that the Vlad of a treifa is a treifa. Rabbi Eliezer, he's following the shita of the Tana Rabbi Eliezer. Domer Vlad treifa lo yikarev. You're not allowed to be makar of Vlad treifa like up in Mizbeach. So even though technically it's not a treifa, but it's something that's not appropriate to be brought as a korban. So we have three different options as to how we can find an example of a treifa that could be mixed in and you wouldn't be able to tell which one it was. So the Gemara wants to know, why did each Tana have its opinion not to say like the other Tana? So Zok Gemara, Kulu Krabiyana Amri. You know why nobody or those who say another pshat disagree with Rabbi Yanai, and can't say that the confusion was between a hole made by a zaev versus a hole made by a thorn, because Loy Amri be Nekubas Hakoitz Ladrusa Zaev made the idea Haimash Vayago. You would be able to tell the difference between a pinprick that made a perfectly round hole in the skin of an animal versus an animal that a wolf sunk its nails into. Would be a little bit of a stretched out hole. It wouldn't be perfectly round. It would be a longer hole. So examining it, you'd easily be able to discern which was the treifa and which not. So that wouldn't be a good example of a treifa that got mixed in to others. Okay? How about Rish Lakish Amri? Why did the Mandarim who argued Rish Lakish, the Arab and the Fuller, why didn't they like his pshat? Dr. Mar Kasaveri Omda Eina Tricha Meisleis. They hold that if the animal actually was able to walk, then you don't need bedika anymore. It's no longer a treifa. So therefore, that eitzah wouldn't work either, because once it started to walk, you could tell already it's not a treifa. And Rabbi Yirmi, why didn't they like Rabbi Yirmi's pshat? Rabbi Yirmi seemed to have had a geshmak of pshat that it was mixed in with a v'la treifa, and according to Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yirmi, because Rabbi Eliezer is not a libud hilchasa, and they didn't want to explain our Mishnah was following the sheet of Atana, who we don't paskin like. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we were zoicha to finish Daf Ayin Dalad, and Be'ez Hashem tomorrow morning we will learn Daf Ayin Hey. Everybody should have an awesomely wonderful day.
Shkoyach.
Shkoyach. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.